This is FX Medicine. I'm Andrew Whitfield Cook, and I'm here with my colleague Bec Gill. We're at the BioCeuticals 8th Research Symposium, and it's weekend 3, day 5, correct? Which day is it? We've just heard from Datis Kharrrazian. How's your writer's cramp going? I mean...
Yeah, I must admit, after having broken my middle finger on my writing hand, it's a little sore after that session. I don't know how many pages of notes you've got. I've got about 5.
And it's all scribble. it's all, they're like there's half finishing. Matt, I talks quick.
Yeah, mine looks like a doctor's prescription pad. It's covered in shorthand that I probably won't be able to interpret later. So.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of review, I can see.
Yes, but, once again highlighting how great it is to have this available in a virtual format so you can go back to the reading.
Absolutely. I think if there's one lesson from today, it's bring on the virtual formats. I'm actually quite liking this. I know that sounds really funny because I do like talking to people and I'm very tactile. I love hugs, but I'm really liking this format, this way of learning. So anyway, some very important things that I got from today, although I'm still confused about a couple of messages. How's your thought processes going on how to assess and let's stick on assessment because that was the main thrust of today, just how complex it can be.
Yeah, so just in case anybody didn't attend and they're wondering what on earth we're talking about, so Datis Kharrrazian had 2 sessions today. One was the plenary session, which was the Hypothyroidism Physiological Web. So for those who work in thyroid health, we understand kind of the nuances around how much the thyroid impacts every cell of the body. I mean, we're taught, aren't we, that it regulates the rate and the rhythm of every cell of the body. Yeah. But I must admit that, I never, you know about that again in this kind of abstract context. But then when you start to talk about it in the nitty gritty and you understand where it is that thyroid hormones are coming into play in places such as inflammation, gut motility, gallbladder motility, cellular aging. I think there's so many things that I've written down.
Neuroinflammation. That was a good one.
Neuroinflammation.
The case study was stunning, amazing. To me it spoke that, we really need to have a reasonable level of expertise in this before looking after these patients, before caring for these patients, because if we're not careful, we merely become the leaf-waving pill prescriber. And if we oversimplify the pathology of this disease, all we're doing is swapping one drug for one supposed natural drug, and we're not uncovering a whole plethora of danger signals that can progress unabated and then surface later on when it's much harder to treat.
Yeah. I mean, functional medicine practitioners have been saying this for years, haven't they? That it's not sufficient to just look at somebody's TSH and diagnose a thyroid disorder or not diagnose one. That the thyroid is active and inactive versions of the thyroid hormone, and then there's the impact on its target sites. There's the ancillary kind of markers of inflammation and various things. He talked about a few of those. But the one thing I think that if I took away one thing from his entire session, it was that if you're, and I wrote this down actually in block letters on my notes, but if you've got a thyroid disorder and your health professional isn't talking about food, they're doing you a massive injustice.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Indeed, that was probably one of the biggest messages, is driving home with a sledgehammer how important dietary intake and cross-reactivity is in seemingly healthy foods.
Yes.
That was the big aha moment for me was like, oh my goodness, you know,
He put
we
up
think
some
that these other
fantastic
foods are
food.
healthy, and bang, you know, we can be really causing them harm.
Unknowingly too, like I think he illustrated it perfectly. He put up some slides showing some, you know, some meals that are quote unquote healthy, you know, great kind of organic vegan vegetarian type meals, or, you know, pan fried seared tuna and this and that, and then went on to highlight how in some of those of the thyroid patients you might potentially be recommending these kind of autoimmune paleo style dietary interventions, why they may not actually improve on it, because they could have this cross reactivity with some of those food items. And that is one section I know I'll have to go back and revisit over and over to really get that to soak in, because I walked away from that with like, now I don't know what food.
Again, you know, I think a great conference is one where you come away with, you know, it's the throwaway line is more questions than answers, but at least a drive, a burning desire to look deeper, to realize there's so much more. And oh, my goodness, you know, like, talk about notes, pages and pages and pages and pages. And still my head's just going, am I confident? No, there's a hell of a lot more learning that I've got to have to do. And I've got to say, like, I'm really looking forward to Datis's second plenary and workshop.
Definitely.
Because there were so many questions left unanswered.
Yeah, absolutely. His second session, which will be obviously next weekend, how hormones impact brain function, and the workshop will be how we develop a personalized diet, lifestyle, nutraceutical protocol for hypothyroidism. So I think that will be kind of the last piece of the puzzle that we're kind of hanging out to learn at the moment. Like, up until this point, we're learning all the whys, but not the hows, I suppose.
Well, that's right. Look, I think Datis really treats his calling with a deep sense of responsibility to the patient. And I really, you know, I heard him say a couple of times during there about, you know, this is really complex. You really need to know this. You know, it's really hard to just divulge all of this in a quick, you know, 1.5 hour session sort of thing. And I totally get that. You can't become an overnight expert. There's a lot more learning to do here. And indeed, you know, for those people that really want to specialize in this, I would advocate that they look up to Datis Kharrrazian. He has online courses that you can do with autoimmune disease. And indeed, if you're interested in learning further, shoot us a message on Facebook and we'll help you out there. But I just wanted to go back because there was a few aha moments. And one of them was the importance of the physical examination. You know, and Katie Barron and I have spoken about this a couple of times at Tammy Guest's Naturepreneur conference. The importance of physical examination, and it doesn't have to be necessarily palpating the abdomen, but look at what physical signs and symptoms you can assess. You know, there was so many. Well, there was Rosenbach's sign, Stellwag's sign, Dalrymple's sign. Never heard of them.
Yes.
Gelenic's sign. Never heard of them. Ever in my nursing.
You've got to look them up now, though, right?
Yeah, hell yeah. But, you know, a couple of the really interesting ones that he was getting his patients to do, particularly that lady that had the early signs of Parkinson's. Remember the facial rigidity?
Well, yeah, but he's worked that out through his observational skills just with her sitting in his office. And then he started to go, okay, she's got some definite signs and some definite markers that are telling me that there's an issue within the thyroid here. But what I found really interesting about that case and some of the others that he kind of alluded to is that when there's a thyroid case, he's number one, he's wondering what else is there what other autoimmunity is present, because if there's one, typically there's another. The other thing was just how important it is to assess those patients for their neurological function. So that test that he was showing, like where you had to touch your hand to your nose and out to a point, and he demonstrated that so well and I love visual stuff like that because it sticks in my brain.
Yes, that's right. I'm watching, like, when she would go from her nose to his finger out here, and there would be that hesitation,
a tremor,
that termination tremor.
Mm.
And the other one was the finger talking. So going like this and see if there's a lag, like this sort of thing in one hand.
Yes.
That was so interesting, and that could be such a poignant and revealing, simple test. There's no labs. There's no concern about finances. It's something that you can do with your patient, also building rapport, but also something that shows instantly your keen interest, indeed expertise in this.
Yes.
It was amazing.
Yes.
Amazing. Yeah.
And the other case that he showed, who was a family friend, and
yes,
I mean, your heart goes out when you hear about a medical story like that, when somebody's obviously, you know, she's in her prime, she's at barely 40, and she wasn't able to walk without a walker. And then to show the video after the fact of, you know, some simple interventions. And number one was removing, it was gluten, right?
Yeah.
Gluten. Yeah. And after 6 weeks, she could walk unaided. It was, you know, that's the power. That's the neurological power for people who are susceptible to the gliadin protein. That's the impact that it can have on the brain. His scans and stuff of the brain. I mean, I love that. I ate that up. I thought it was incredible.
But who does that? Which healthcare professional, whether they be orthodox or not, would instigate looking at the cerebellum for inflammation? And for assessing them for neurological things early. Indeed, that was a point I forgot to bring up at the very beginning, and that wasn't interesting. At the very beginning, he said 90% of them are covert. Only 10% of them are overt for hypothyroid until later stage, and it takes between 5 and 10 years for that progression to occur until these signs and symptoms are so obvious that they show up on normal pathology labs. Doesn't that smack of endometriosis?
And also that's an important question to determine in the consultation process. You know, because most people tend to know when they start to feel like things are a little awry, and, you know, maybe they're a bit more tired than they used to be. Maybe they're reacting to certain foods, you know, these kind of subtle changes that they're like, well, it's not serious enough for me to go and see somebody about it, but it's there in the back of your mind, like this has happened. Maybe my joints are a bit sore and stiff, or maybe my feet give me pins and needles when I get up in the morning, like whatever it might be. But for him to ask, like, you know, let's go back through here and let's start to understand, when did your symptom picture really start? Because it gives him an understanding of how aggressive the kind of disease process is.
Absolutely. And indeed, that was one of these 5 clinical considerations, wasn't it? You know, are your T3 levels or T4 levels stable, or are they fluctuating? Is there aggression of the disease, or are there signs of aggressive disease? I.e., is there progression and a requirement for an increase in meds over time? That was a big one for me, because we've seen that so often, haven't we?
Oh, how often do you hear that? How often do you hear somebody say, oh, well, I keep having to take more and more medication, like obviously my thyroid's really clapped out.
Yeah, that's right. Cerebellar issues, so the fine motor coordination and postural issues. Is there evidence of other tissue involvement with autoimmune disease? That was a big one. We've heard about it. We've heard it spoken before, but how keenly aware are we of this in our patients? Do we actively ask them, you know, do you have any skin itches? Do you have any hair loss? All of these other, you know, what is the nature of that hair loss?
The peaches and cream complexion, the dry and flaky.
The peaches and cream. That's right. Yeah. And what was there? The pretibial myxedema. Now I've never seen that. I've seen myxedema before, facial myxedema, but not that pretibial skin thickening. That's really interesting.
Yeah, I didn't know about that one either.
Yeah, and the last one was medications. Now that one, how many questions have we got? You know, what did he mention? Estrogen, that was a big one, which sort of answers why Hashimoto's and other autoimmune disorders are more prevalent in females. But the other one was iodine. Now, there's a lot of questions that need to be answered here, aren't they? I hope they come out, you know, when he speaks again in his second plenary and his second case histories.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things, one of my take homes was just how significant the impact of your thyroid hormone is on your gut. So, I mean, we often think that when somebody's got an autoimmune disorder or you know, a thyroid disorder, and there may be weight gain or weight loss, like it's logical to think, okay, I've got to address diet. But what I found really interesting and what I wrote down was, you know, when you've got hypothyroid, you've impaired your blood flow to your gut. So even if we instituted some of maybe the interventions that we would typically reach for to help, quote unquote, heal the gut, that they actually lack the capacity to do anything with that kind of level of nutrition, because they're not getting the blood flow there to begin with. They've shut down, in some instances, their motility for their gut. So things aren't moving through, things are fermenting in there. They're so much more susceptible to dysbiosis and things like small intestinal bowel overgrowth. You know, like, again, we know in an abstract term, the thyroid affects the rate and the rhythm of all cells, but just to get kind of those really kind of specific nuggets to go, okay, that really helps me target or direct my therapy now. That makes me understand why you're giving some people a drug and it's not working the way you want it to work, or why you've implemented some diet strategies and they're not feeling better, or maybe they're feeling worse.
Yeah, look, the question in my mind now is, how early do we suspect thyroid involvement? You know, and I haven't got an answer yet.
Yeah.
I haven't got an answer. You know, when we're looking at a patient who has gut symptoms and you suspect SIBO, should you always suspect thyroid behind that? When you're looking at a patient and you're looking at hormonal issues, should you always suspect thyroid behind that first? And how early do we, and how much do we assess them for thyroid involvement before moving on?
Yeah.
There's a lot of questions. You know, what were the other things that he broke down the myths? Temperature. I was of the mind that one of the simplest tools that we have at our disposal, the old thermometer, was one of the best ways of assessing your metabolic rate. No, because what if they're in an upswing of their thyroid metabolism in Hashimoto's?
Yeah.
You think it's fine?
Yeah.
Or they're in the euthyroid phase of their Hashimoto's.
Yeah.
But their thyroid is really struggling, but their temperature's fine. They're still tired.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot of thinking to do.
I mean, it can give us clinical cues, but it doesn't need to be a be-all and end-all in that instance. Another thing I found really, really interesting, actually, was the fact that, you know, like you said, you've got to start to wonder, like, is the thyroid underpinning a lot of these various disorders that we're seeing, but it's going unnoticed or undiagnosed? But then he was also saying that when your thyroid is low, your phase 2 conjugation ability is impaired. And that makes you more susceptible to pollutants. And I mean, hello, we live in a world full of pollutants. It's unavoidable. And particularly in women, we know that the evidence shows that women are grossly exposed to more pollutants than men.
Yeah.
And then, you know, it's a vicious cycle.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And indeed, that was one question that I feel there's a lot more to explore, and that is the issues of pesticides. You know, in things like, you know, pseudo Parkinson's. So again, how early do you assess thyroid? You know, it's just, you know, and I don't know. It's going to take a lot more thinking on my part. I feel like a dunce.
Yeah, I must admit, I came away and I started to do some reading, some deep dive into, okay, well, how are we addressing systemic inflammation through, you know, Treg cells and various things. And yeah, it was interesting. Some of the things I was reading that help with that. Glutathione, which I think most of us are chronically low in. People with pain might take paracetamol, depletes it further. Vitamin D, what are some of the other, and the precursors and recycling agents, glutathione are other examples as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it kind of changes the approach. I don't know. Yeah. I don't know if I'll approach a thyroid case the same anymore ever again.
I think I'd be giving it a lot more thought, a lot more consideration for other factors.
Yes, absolutely. Well,
yeah. We look forward to more.
Yes.
So who's on next? Who's on tomorrow?
Tomorrow we've got Amanda Archibald, her second plenary and workshop session. So that they're running tomorrow, and of course Amy in the afternoon. The impact of water damage to buildings and mold, biotoxin illness on hormone health.
Yes.
And then
now there's another conundrum.
Oh no, that's another can of worms.
What affects which? I'll be very interested. I might actually ask Amanda tomorrow what her thoughts are about the cross-reactivity that Datis is finding with regards to not just the usual culprits, the usual suspects, wheat, but also things that we would ordinarily consider healthy, tuna, rice, cashews, of course, yes. And what was the other one? Spinach.
I can't remember.
Yeah, that plate. Spelt was another one.
Yeah.
You know? So it's just really... brain hurt.
Yeah.
Anyway, so much more to investigate.
Yes.
But thank you so much for taking us through this today, Bec, and everybody.
We'll see you tomorrow for day 6 and the third. Obviously, this is the third weekend. Next weekend is the final weekend of sessions, and there will also be the panel, which is always one of the most exciting elements.
Fantastic. That's where all the meat hits, doesn't it? Yeah. Like that's when people will disagree, agree, and really challenge each other as clinicians. So it's really great to see the experts give their opinions towards each other's viewpoint and stance, how they approach
meeting of the minds.
Yeah, really interesting. So yeah, we look forward to that.
All right. Well, we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.
This is FX Medicine. I'm Andrew Whitfield Cook and Bec Guild.